There are a lot of different ways to use film. Most of us know it for the types of films that are shown in a movie theater, which are more about entertaining audiences for what they want to see. However, that is only just one way that we can actually use film because there are many other ways, and that is where experimental film comes into play because experimental film explores the other ways that film can be used outside of narrative functions. So, first, an experimental film is pretty much any film that ignores the guidelines of what mainstream filmmaking does. And they do this because they want to focus on the conceptual side of film rather than focus on the narrative side. And they often do this through ignoring the narrative aspects of film entirely. So clearly, there are a lot of different ways that experimental film challenges the mainstream, but what is the greatest way that it does this? I think that the three main ways that experimental film challenges the mainstream are where it creates variations of narrative structure or storytelling structure that is normally seen in mainstream cinema. And they explore creating feelings and evoking feelings and sentiments within audiences through imagery and ignore the narrative concepts entirely. And they reference back to what film is as a medium and see how it is all just an illusion. The first of these are the variants of narrative structure, which started in the 1920s with films like Dada films and Surrealist films. But these films, while having a series of events, would largely focus on the more nonsensical side of crafting a narrative. So they wouldn't really be narratives because these films would often make little sense, but they would still include this series of events. Or, for example, a film like Un Chien Andalo had zero plot of any sort and focused entirely on the elements of just destroying everything the mainstream film does. Alan Thayer puts it as being, quote, an anti-game which, by the systemic way it proposes to destroy the rules of earlier cinematic games, transforms itself into a superior form of play. By destroying the rules of earlier cinematic games, what he is saying is that they're discarding all rhyme and reason that comes with any type of narrative mainstream film and looking at that as being a way of creating a film. However, because they include the series of events still, which are indeed included in mainstream film, this can't be the greatest way that experimental film challenges the mainstream because there's still the series of events in both, and that is still a similarity. That brings us to films that are more art-based and focused on the use of images to connect with the viewers. And they do this because they want to focus on film being more artistic and they want to provoke reactions with viewers. So, for instance, a film by Bruce Bailey called All My Life has the use of beautiful images with the soundtrack that in turn evokes certain feelings and sentiments within the viewers. Or, as he puts it, his goal is, quote, to discover true American themes, the images that lay closest to the hearts of our citizens. So, when he does this, he is effectively reaching for the themes that are held most near and dear to what people want to see, which is a very strong way of challenging the mainstream because it has no narrative and instead focuses on this aspect. However, this aspect is still present in mainstream film, but because it is present in mainstream film, there is still similarity because mainstream film likewise will have movies that will try and connect with the viewer, but they will have a narrative within them. So this type of film essentially singles out the concept of connecting with viewers and just does it in a non-narrative context, which brings us to structuralist films, which are the strongest way that experimental film challenges the mainstream because their goal is, quote, according to Edward Pascal, to reflect through film, the viewer's conscious experience of film. They are about showing the viewer for what film is, stripping away all illusion, and exposing film for just being simple material, as in Owen Land's film, in which there appear edge lettering, sprocket holes, dirt particles, etc., which shows the vulnerability of the film strip, and how this little thing is just nothing special, but it is what creates all the illusions that we are entertained by. And mainstream film refuses to do that, because when mainstream film will do that, it effectively would, in fact, take away any connection, any immersing behaviors of any narrative film with the audience, and the audiences want their illusions, and they don't want to be reminded of how cheap these illusions truly are. And so, to conclude, these different ways of experimental film all point toward concepts. They point toward concepts, and these concepts are ultimately better than entertainment and make our society a smarter place to be, because the more we think, the more we have more understanding and wisdom through films such as these and through things such as these, because ultimately it is better that we think and have ideas rather than just watch whatever entertains us. And that is why these films are very important as well, because they make the world a smarter place ultimately.